Good morning everybody, this is Stephen Pugh of the Home Bible College. It's August the 29th and we're beginning our readings today in the letter to the Galatians, chapter 1, from verse 1. And here Paul is beginning a letter to a group of churches in what's known as Galatia. And he's writing a letter alone. It's Paul alone who writes. He says at the very beginning in his introduction, he says, Paul, an apostle. And then he says, and not of men, or by man, but by Jesus Christ, God the Father, who raised him from the dead. The apostle Paul was not an apostle because he had been called by men to be an apostle. He wasn't elevated by men to be an apostle. He was called by Jesus Christ personally, and by God the Father, who raised him from the dead. And it's with all the brethren that are with me. So first of all he states, listen, it's from me, and I'm an apostle. I haven't been made an apostle by any man whatsoever, but only by Jesus Christ. But I'm also writing with all the brethren that are with me, behind me, in what I'm saying. It's one thing, you see, to feel a sense of calling. It's something else for the brethren that are with you to feel your calling with you. Now he begins straight away in verse 6, and verse 6 is my password for today. I marvel that ye are so soon removed from him that called you into the grace of God, the grace of Christ, unto another gospel, which is not another, but there are some that trouble you and would pervert the gospel of Christ. Now, one of the things we have to come to terms with as Christians is that not everything out there is true. There are people who teach false doctrine. There are people who pervert the gospel of Christ, and they bring trouble upon Christians in general. And Paul is going to face them down, and he's going to speak to them forcibly in the name of the Lord. And he's not going to pull any punches. He's not going to be soft. He's not going to be, oh well, there's two ways of understanding this. No, there's one way of understanding this, and it's very clear. It is the grace of Christ. God has called you into the grace of Christ. But I'm amazed, he says, that you have so soon removed from him that called you into the grace of Christ unto another gospel. He says this is a perversion of the gospel of Christ. What is the gospel of Christ that is being perverted here? The gospel of Christ is the message of God to mankind, that Christ has died, has been buried, and raised again the third day, and is coming again. That's the gospel. Now along had come some Judaizers, and they'd come into this area of Galatia, and what they'd said to the Christians is, oh well, it's great that you're Christians, you're Gentile Christians, that's great, but you need to add to that Judaism. You need to get circumcised. You need to keep the law of Moses. You need to keep the Sabbath. You need to keep the 10 Commandments. After all, these 10 Commandments, they're from God, and all people are responsible to keep the 10 Commandments all the time. Now Paul is going to totally unpick all that. He's going to totally demolish that false teaching. Christians are not under the law, they are under grace. So he says this. He says, but though we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel unto you than that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed. He brings upon these false teachers the curse of God for spreading false teaching. As we said before, so say I now again, if any man preach any other gospel unto you than that which you have already received, let him be accursed. Now, and Paul is not pulling any punches here. He's speaking directly to the man, speaking directly to the false teachers. He's speaking to the church about them, and he says, whoever he is, whoever they might be, if they preach a different gospel than the one which you have already received, may the judgments of God fall upon him. You see, this isn't a matter of opinion. This isn't a matter of opinion. Opinions are two a penny. They should not be held too firmly. But convictions, the gospel is worth living and dying for. Now he says in verse 10, for now do I persuade men or God? Do I seek to please men? If I sought to please men, then I wouldn't be the servant of Christ. Now for Paul, things were very straightforward. Very straightforward. The gospel is absolutely without any compromise whatsoever. And this false teaching, which is going to be revealed and exposed by Paul in his letter to the Galatians, is rampant in the world today. It's rampant in the Hebrew roots movement. It's rampant in Seventh-day Adventism. It's rampant in all the cults. It's rampant in churches that are King James Version only. It's rampant in places where people understand law but not grace, or they think that all men at all times were under law. Well, let me tell you some news. Christians are not under the law, they're under grace, and you cannot be under the law and under grace at the same time. Quite a different thing altogether. So I'm going to look forward to this little book. It's fascinating, it's thrilling, it's insightful, and what a blessing it's going to be. How Paul will explain where Christians are in relation to him, how that they're not under the law, how that what Israel experienced under the law has got no relation to Christianity whatsoever. So there we are, we've started. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a great day. God bless you all. Bye for now.